Life, death, and rebirth. We are embodying the Phoenix. These are your horoscopes for peak Scorpio season. We're covering Halloween, also known as Samhain or Dia de los Muertos. And after the day after Halloween, we have a new moon in Scorpio. It is a season of kind of embracing all of these really intense themes: life, death, rebirth, karma. But there's reasons for these traditions. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Erin, I'm Queen Bee Tarot. Thank you so much for being here. I've got timestamps and chapters below. I'm going to be covering a variety of topics. I'm going to be doing a general overview for the collective to start, and then I'm going to get into detailed horoscopes for all 12 zodiac signs. Are you ready? Let's get in. Speaking of death, what I did was I pulled out two death cards. One is from the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, and one is from the Everyday Witch Tarot by Elizabeth Alba. What we have here is two representations of the death cycle, and the death card in tarot is associated with the zodiac sign Scorpio. Why is that? Well, in nature, what's happening is it appears that death is surrounding us. The leaves are falling off of the trees. The flowers are no longer blooming, the fruit has all come off of the trees, and hundreds and thousands of years ago, since the dawn of humanity, humans would prepare for the winter by culling any animals that they were not able to feed over the winter. Any animals that they planned to harvest at this time would then be prepared in a way to allow them to have food, steady food, throughout the winter. So in a lot of different ways, this is a time of death, and it has been for a very long time. That is why multiple different cultures around the world celebrate and honor death, because death is a part of life. There's only two things guaranteed in the universe, and that is change and death. And what we have here, what I wanted to do is show you these two tarot cards before we get in, because this energy that we have been experiencing has been profoundly overwhelming, to say the least. Every single person I know, including myself, are going through some really, really intense themes. But what we have the opportunity to do is allow these emotions, these experiences, these thoughts to surface in a way that we can kind of click, click, click them all together and see the bigger picture. And it is by acknowledging all that needs to be released, it is by acknowledging all that within us or around us is dying, that we give ourselves the opportunity for a new beginning. And when I teach tarot, that's what I teach my students. If you pull the tarot death card, it's not literal death. What it means is it's a time of letting go. It's a time of release. It's a time of closing the chapter, and every ending leads to a new beginning. That's the cycle of life. So what we have here in the original Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, I always like to point out that not only do we have the Grim Reaper riding on a horse, but the Grim Reaper is riding a white horse. That means that the momentum, the journey, it is about purification. And the flower on the flag, we have an inverted, sorry if that's out of focus, we have an inverted 5-point star. The 5-point star inverted refers to ego. And in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, what we have is a representation of ego death. So like I said, it's not literal death, it is that a part of us, a part of our identity. And what I mean by that is like a part of your identity that is not completely you. A role you play, a hat you wear, a version of yourself that comes out in particular situations in your life. But that version, that hat, that identity, that character, it's not completely you, right? And so ego death is recognizing all the ways in which our invented character gets in the way of our authenticity. Because it is only through authenticity that we are able to channel divinity. We cannot channel divinity through ego. Doesn't work that way. And then what we have in Elizabeth Alba's Everyday Witch Tarot is we have a representation of cutting cords. In this card, the Grim Reaper has a sword. He's cutting a cord. And we have the representation of when one door closes, the other one opens. And what I'm hoping to do just by showing you these examples of tarot cards is help you understand it's not just you, it's everyone. Everyone is going through the thick of it right now. But we have an opportunity to let go and release in a way that gives ourselves the gift of renewal. And sometimes that release process is like really big emotions, or maybe chaos or conflict, or all these different things. But ultimately, what we have the opportunity to do is find some sort of universal truth within us that allows us to plant a seed of new beginnings. The other thing too is that we've been going through a lot of really challenging astrological signatures lately, adding to a quality of time that feels a lot like just being squeezed. But anytime I feel squeezed in my life, I've come to recognize that these are almost moments like being a cork in a champagne bottle. It is this process of squeezing that the cork pops out, right? Or for those who have given birth, there is this sense that there's so much fear around the birth process. I've had 3 children, and there's this part of you that almost dies through the process. Many women have died, but what I mean by that is that you have to face your fears in such a profound way and go through really, really, really intense pain and experiences that leads to a baby being birthed, right? That sensation of being squeezed. Every single one of us humans that was birthed in a natural way was squeezed before we came into this world. So I'm just trying to connect the dots, right? What we have is we are coming out of a period in which we have been so focused on the details, and that sort of continues, that what I'm hoping to empower you to do is see the bigger picture, allowing you to kind of take a step back, connect the dots for yourself, in a way that hopefully you won't be drowning in the details. And what I wanted to show you guys really quick, November 1st, we have a new moon in Scorpio. And this new moon has the most incredible astrological signatures associated with it. What we have right here, see this rectangle? It's actually called a mystic rectangle. The other thing we have is a grand water trine. And not only that, but the grand water trine extends into a kite. You see this shape right here? In astrology, it's called a kite. And the planets that are involved in these particular configurations, 2 of the astrological alignments that are happening right now are alignments that are going to be repeated moving forwards over the next few months because a couple of planets are going retrograde. One of those alignments that's going to be repeated, right now we have, where's Mercury? Mercury opposite Uranus. Mercury represents our headspace, anything we're thinking, anything that kind of comes out of our mouths, but it goes beyond the language and the thoughts that we have. It's also our personal perspective. And a lot of the times the process of ego death, which is also, ego death is a part of shadow work. It's a part of spiritual growth. It's a part of psychological healing. Part of that whole ego death thing is questioning our thoughts. Because as Mercury represents, it's the thoughts that we think, but it's the unique lens through which we see the world, right? It's like having glasses that are kind of foggy. Our lens through which we see the world is colored and clouded by personal experience, whether it be challenges, crisis, trauma, basically everything that we see in the world is a reflection of our own personal experiences. Somebody who's had an amazing, beautiful life, they've never suffered, they've never had to want for anything, then the lens through which they see the world is going to be nothing but beauty. They won't understand pain, right? Whereas somebody who's gone through constant crisis, constant trauma, they've never had the experience of consistency or stability or health or safety, then the lens through which they see the world is going to be out of fear, because that's what they've come to understand that the world represents, right? So the more that we can understand our personal perspective, including what led us to believe the things that we do, what currently feeds that perspective. The other part of that is this term coined by scientists and people who study how the brain works. It's called confirmation bias. We as humans have this funny thing called confirmation bias, and what that means is whatever it is that we've decided inside of ourselves, when we look at the world, when we look at what's happening, what our brains do without us even thinking about it is our brains go, I have already decided the thing, therefore everything I see out here confirms it. So for example, if you have that lens of pain, then everything you see is going to confirm for you, yeah, life is painful, life is hard, right? Whereas if you have a lens of love and peace, and again, no fault of your own, right? We go through some crazy shit. There's a reason that you see things the way you do. There's a reason that you feel the way you do, right? If we're looking through a lens of love, we're going to go, wow, there's beauty everywhere. Sure, there's chaos, but there's beauty, you know? So as much as we can be aware of the thoughts that we're having, the way that we're perceiving the situations that we're in, and the ways in which our lens is colored by experience, that recognition, that realization becomes the catalyst for change. Change in astrology is represented by Uranus. So what we have illustrated here is a polarizing situation in which there's tension. We are being pulled maybe in a couple of different directions. And what we are being invited to do during this time, question your beliefs. Question everything that you think, because it is in the analysis of what is happening in your headspace and perspective that you are going to be able to realize what needs to change. Now that polarization of Uranus opposite Mercury brings quite often like challenging change, being forced to change, either by circumstances or some sort of internal crisis, but often it is through breakdowns that we have breakthroughs. The whole ego death theme, shadow work, dark night of the soul, what is happening is often we get to the lowest of the low. Addicts, alcoholics call it hitting rock bottom. You don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict to hit rock bottom. In spiritual circles, it's called the dark night of the soul. It is the exact same thing. But what we do is we hit this puddle of a mess and go, holy crap, something needs to change. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to live a life that repeats this anymore, right? And so it's kind of by waving that white flag of surrender that spirit comes in. It is through surrender that we invite in divinity. When we're pushing, when we're fighting, when we're stuck in our egos, there's no room for divinity, right? So as much as we can, we are invited to look at what it is we're going through and think, okay, what is a potential outcome of this? We are not meant to suffer endlessly. We are meant to kind of hit those moments where everything clicks and realize the ways in which we are in our own way, the ways in which we are our own obstacle inside of our heads or outside in our lives. Now, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and they included in a message that they sent a quote, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed to hear. The quote is this: when we hit our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change. And this is actually a quote from the character Aang from the Legend of Korra. But this quote was literally just really what I needed to hear in that moment, right? And that is a reference to hitting rock bottom. It's a reference to the dark night of the soul. When we hit our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change. That is what these horoscopes are about. We are being invited to see, okay, where are my thought processes and perspectives getting in the way of healthy change? And how can I question my thoughts or change what's happening up here in order to manifest that change that I'm hoping for in my life? The other astrological signature that is very awesome and important right now, oh wait, let me back up. The thing about Mercury opposite Uranus, it is going to repeat. And the reason it's going to repeat is because Mercury is going retrograde on November 26th. So what happens is Mercury and Uranus have this opposition. Mercury is going to go a little bit here and it's going to come back and it's going to kind of be like, and another thing. So whatever it is that you're experiencing either now or leading up to the new moon, as far as noticing what's happening here, as far as noticing what needs to change in your life, expect it to be a repeating theme all the way until the end of the year. And sometimes that's how healing is. Another friend of mine referred to it as peeling back the layers of the onion. I like that because we cry when we're peeling an onion, you know what I mean? But that's the thing. Some of the things that might come through for you like now or in the next few days are almost going to be kind of top layers And then what happens is through any kind of psychological or spiritual growth process, we kind of deal with what's at the top layer. It's a thing. We deal with it, we process it, and then when we're ready, we move on to the next layer. If it was everything all at once, it would just be too much, right? So expect layers to be peeled back over the next few weeks, all the way till the end of the 2024 calendar year. Okay, now I want to talk about the grand water trine. The grand water trine is involving Mercury, yet again, in Scorpio. Mars is in Cancer, and Neptune is in Pisces. So these three planets are interacting in a way to open up flow. It's never all bad, even though often it feels like that. So this is what's awesome about these particular horoscopes and the energy that we're stepping into over the next few weeks, is that for every challenge that we're being faced with, for every problem that we are recognizing we really need to put some TLC into, we are also being given these situations or energetic support in which there is an open pathway, there is a flow, there is an opportunity to find grace and ease despite whatever it is that we are personally and collectively dealing with. Mars in Cancer means that the action that we take is going to be catalyzed and full of deep emotions. And these are not always going to be actions that are well thought out, but what's happening is it's kind of stirring up the dust so we can look at it, so we can heal it, so we can deal with it. And then shortly after the new moon, let's see, November 3rd, Mars moves into Leo. Mars at the very end of Cancer is opposing Pluto at the very end of Capricorn. This is one of the other repeating signatures that we're going to have, this one until spring of 2025. So quite a few months moving forwards. The thing about Mars at the end of Cancer is that there's a sense of urgency when it comes to acting on the big emotions that we're experiencing. It's like, I have to deal with this right now, or these big emotions are so overwhelming, logic is out the window, I'm in full breakdown mode. Any kind of thing along those lines. Pluto at the very end of Capricorn, for the last time for 250 years, yes. Pluto at the end of Capricorn is like final exam time when it comes to generational patterns, repeating trauma, repeating shadow work that needs to be dealt with. You know, Pluto's been dancing around in this section of Capricorn for a couple of years, actually, really approaching Aquarius and then coming back, and then stepping into Aquarius and then coming back. It feels as though we have been through the ringer for years. And it feels like endless torture in which a lot of us are just raising that white flag and saying, good Lord, I surrender. I can't do this anymore. But that is the first step towards healing. That is the first step towards ego death. That is the first step towards being reborn. What's really awesome is that Pluto and Mars are both planetary rulers for the zodiac sign Scorpio. And Scorpio, although we know it as associated with the little scorpion, Scorpio is also associated with the eagle and the phoenix. Scorpio's first incarnation is the scorpion, seeing enemies everywhere, having a limited perspective, being so close to the ground, and stinging, preemptively stinging. Whereas the eagle is kind of the second incarnation of Scorpio. The eagle has learned to rise above. The eagle has learned to get some breathing room to see the bigger picture. But the third incarnation of Scorpio is the phoenix. And the phoenix is a mythological creature that repeatedly was born and died and then was reborn through the process of completely burning up in flame. You too might feel like you are dying. You too might feel like the process of psychological evolution and spiritual awareness and awakening is traumatic. You know, people think, oh, I'm going to be enlightened. Oh, it's hard. It's really hard and it's really heavy. And there's a reason that people say ignorance is bliss, right? Anyone who walks a path of awareness and awakening has to confront the deepest, darkest parts of their own shadow. But here's the funny thing, everybody has a shadow. If there is light, there is going to be a shadow, right? There's no avoiding it. Funny, not funny, as a parent, when young children discover their shadow, they often freak out. They're like, oh my God, everywhere I go, this thing is following me. And as a parent, you're like trying so hard not to laugh, holding space with sympathy, right? But that's how we as adults are when we discover our shadow. Like, holy crap, I want this thing off of me. How do I get rid of it? Well, the punchline is you don't. The punchline is that shadow work involves acknowledging, seeing it, and then always being on the lookout for it. As you work with mental health, as you work with making sure that your headspace is a safe space, you're going to have some good days, you're going to have some really crappy days. You're going to have some times where you're like, awesome, I'm able to deal with this in a healthy, mature way. And then you're going to have other times where you start spinning, thinking about the fights that you're having, the people that challenge you, the life circumstances that challenge you, and before you know it, your ego has fully taken over and you're kind of in a rotten, dark place. To recognize that on a continual and regular basis is what ongoing shadow work is. It's like, wow, I am sinking my own ship. I am making myself miserable, either by fighting with people inside of my head or breaking my own heart with imagined scenarios, right? So that is what ongoing shadow work looks like. It is never a one-time thing. Once you start the process of shadow work, you come to realize it is like peeling an onion. There will always be another layer. And it's important to remember that we as human beings, there's never a point that we hit a finish line. There's never a point that we are magically fixed. Healing is simply recognizing that you're dealing with the same shit, but you're responding differently. That's about it, right? So if any of you out there are struggling with a desire to be fixed or healed or perfect in any kind of way, don't even stress yourself out. It's about doing your best and remembering that your best is going to be different every day. That's okay, right? So the opposition of Mars and Pluto is going to be the most intense over the next couple of days. And then what happens is that Mars moves into Leo, what did I say, November 4th? November 3rd. And November 14th, Pluto moves into Aquarius for good this time. Well, until 2043. And then it moves into Pisces. But what's happening is that Mars is going to go retrograde over the winter. And when it goes retrograde, it's gonna pass this opposition with Pluto, and then it's gonna come back. And again, just like the Mercury-Uranus opposition, it's gonna be like whatever's happening in your life as far as shadow work, as far as control, power issues, conflict, whatever it is that you're circling around, it's like Mars is going to go away, you're going to have a break, and then it's going to come back, and it's going to be like, and another thing. But what's cool is that after this period over the next week or so, the opposition between Mars and Pluto over the rest of the winter and into spring of next year is not going to be in the Capricorn-Cancer axis anymore. It's going to have two more oppositions, but they will both be on the Leo and Aquarius axis. So the dynamic through which that we are dealing with the shadow is going to transform personally and collectively. It's not going to be exactly the same, and it's not going to have the sense of like drowning or the sense of urgency associated with the Cancer Capricorn axis and both planets being at the final degrees. One thing I've mentioned before is that anytime a planetary body is at the final degrees of a zodiac sign, it is known as an anaretic degree, and it has a sense of urgency. It's like, I gotta figure this out, I gotta solve this problem, I gotta speak my truth, whatever it is, right? And that sense of urgency and panic and stress typically doesn't help things, but in a lot of ways we are being pushed to deal with these things in a way that we are able to let them go, to close the door, to cut ties, right? To find that new beginning, to experience that ego death and purify our journey moving forwards. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. These are the basic things that I'm going to be covering in the detailed horoscopes. Some of these things, like I said, the Mars-Pluto opposition, it is going to repeat over the next 3-4 months. The Uranus-Mercury opposition is going to repeat over the next 2 months. So if you feel as though you are having kind of a gnarly deja vu, it is, just want to let you know, you're not the only one, but everything that we are going through, being squeezed, is giving us the opportunity to be reborn. And it is in the process of being squeezed that we cry, we shout, we explode, we implode, whatever it is. But breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. Please don't beat yourselves up. Please don't go to extreme measures. If you need to, please do call a crisis line, reach out to a friend. If you're having a tough time, please just remember this too shall pass. No storm lasts forever. And if you really do feel like you want to find the ultimate exit door, please don't. You matter. You are unconditionally lovable. It is really important that you're here because no other soul could ever replace you. You came to this planet with a very, very, very specific soul mission, and nobody else can do it. You have this one relationship with your creator, and it's important that you're here to do it. So love yourself unconditionally. And if you have a hard time loving yourself unconditionally, let yourself be loved by others. Like I said, if you need to, call a crisis line. Yeah, I just want you guys to know these are challenging times, right? But we're going to get through this together. And so hopefully what I'm able to offer you in these horoscopes and any other ways in which I support you guys, what I'm hoping to offer you is a life jacket. I'm hoping to offer you a key or a surfboard or any of these metaphorical things that help you not drown, get your head above water, see the bigger picture, see your own divinity. It is through authenticity that we channel divinity. So that's the idea here. I hope I'm able to be helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my papers all lined up. I'm probably going to need my glasses, and I also have a timer to make sure that I stay on task. We are covering October 27th to November 9th, life, death, rebirth as the Phoenix. There is a lot going on, but for every challenge, we are also being given a little bit of a key to surviving this dumpster fire of an astrological time. All right, guys, let's see what we've got. I want to make sure the music is not bothering me. Okay. Yes, glasses. Look at that. Everything's so much more clear now. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I've got this one eye that's just watering like crazy. Good grief. Perimenopause is just the gift that keeps on giving. Anyone else out there that is suffering like hormonally or anything like that, it's a thing. That's another thing along the lines of like mental health stuff, supporting yourself, finding the supports that you really need. If you are anywhere around my age, late 30s, in your 40s, anything like that, and if you feel like every day you just feel more and more crazy and more just discombobulated, please do consider that hormones might be a part of it. If you possess ovaries, there is a huge component of going through your own metaphorical death, because anyone who possesses ovaries aligns with the divine feminine. And the divine feminine is and I'm sorry, I just want to refer to the physical feminine. If you identify as feminine and you don't possess ovaries, you may find that this resonates with you as well. But I just wanted to mention there's the part of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And so anyone who's around my age is starting to kind of have that death period on a psychological, but also sort of a physical level, in which we are stepping into our crone phase. But it's wretched. It's misery. I have heard that some people get it through it relatively unscathed, but not me. So the sense of suffering, the sense of feeling like you're going crazy, please don't hesitate to consult a medical professional and find those supports that you may possibly need. It's not just you. Okay. So I'm going to get into the detailed horoscopes for all 12 zodiac signs. These are written for rising signs. If you do not know your rising sign, that's totally fine. Just watch the one for your sun sign. And if you know both, watch both for extra insight for sure. So the first thing we're going to be looking at, Aries sun and Aries rising. Welcome to your horoscopes, you guys. Thank you for being here. I want to start off by talking about something good. The good stuff that's happening right now is represented by this grand water trine happening with three major planets, Mars, Mercury, and Neptune in the three water signs, Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces. Mars in Cancer is imploring you to take action based on the emotions that you're experiencing. So what might be happening is you might be, especially with Mercury in your 8th house, you might be feeling very private about the emotions that you're going through. You might be suffering in silence. You might be dealing with a mental health crisis or just a really crappy time, but secretly, privately. And so with Mars in your 4th house, you are being urged to take action on that emotional experience that you're having, whether it be supporting yourself, talking to a friend, receiving professional supports, anything like that, because there's a possibility that you're drowning or suffering in silence, and that's no good. We want to make sure that you are feeling fully loved and fully embraced with whatever it is that you're going through. But because Neptune is in your 12th house of dreams, secrets, that which is hidden, you may feel as though you are the only one going through intensity like this, or you may be reluctant to share what you're going through because you might fear this is a bit too much for the people that love me. And if that's the case, please do remember that the big emotions that you're having, I guarantee somebody else on the planet has had them too. You aren't too much for everyone. If you feel as though it's a bit much for coffee talk with your friends, that's fair, but please don't stop there. Please look for professional supports. And if you can't afford therapy, there's a lot of really, really good therapists that provide awesome material for free on YouTube. For example, one of my favorites is called The Crappy Childhood Fairy. And she deals specifically with PTSD, CPTSD, and all kinds of stuff, especially from early childhood and how it influences us as adults. So anyway, I just wanted to say, please seek out that information. You are not too much. So that open pathway is the understanding and the willingness to face and address those emotions. The other part of it is allowing them to surface, giving yourself any opportunity that you can to allow these emotions to come up. You know what's awesome is having a screaming pillow. A little pillow that every time you're upset, you can just scream into your pillow, because you do need to get it out in some way. And if you feel like a great deal of intensity around it, choosing a safe method for emotional release is going to help a lot. So screaming pillows, I highly recommend them. Now, one of the challenges that you're dealing with, though, is Venus square Saturn. Venus is in your 9th house, Saturn's in your 12th. You are coming to realize that it is your belief systems. It is what you think about yourself in private. It is the way in which you speak to yourself, especially if you're beating yourself up in your challenging, hardest moments. That is the obstacle that needs to be addressed. It's your headspace that's not a very safe space. It is possible that the issue that you think you're dealing with is feeling as though your possibilities or your dreams are limited. And if that is the case, that is highly likely as being valid, but please do consider whether or not some sort of internal perspective is making things feel worse than they actually are. Just a thought. Just something to consider. Again, the whole theme right now is question everything. Question what you believe. Question what you tell yourself. Question what other people tell you, right? Because it is in the questioning that we might find awakening and realizations. And that sense of like really need to kind of question everything for you is polarizing your 8th and 2nd houses. So the 8th house is about keeping things private, but it's also ruled by Scorpio and the intensity that you feel inside of yourself. Polarizing with Uranus in your 2nd house, it's like coming to realize that something in your immediate environment needs to change, but realizing that in order to affect change in your immediate environment, what has to happen is that your energy, your headspace, your thoughts need to change. Then you're going to see something manifest in your reality. It's kind of an interchange thing. So a blessing for you is that the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st is going to be in your 8th house. So this is an awesome opportunity to do things differently when it comes to maybe keeping those big intense feelings to yourself. Maybe it's realizing that you no longer need to suffer in silence, that you can reach out for the help that you need. The other thing is that the new moon in Scorpio for you guys might also manifest in a new beginning for your finances, especially in the realm of debt or shared responsibilities when it comes to the load that you're carrying. You might realize that filing for bankruptcy or something like that would actually be a blessing, and then you could actually like sleep well at night because you're not always worried about debt. There is an opportunity for a new beginning in the house of Scorpio, life, death, rebirth, finances, whatever it is. But it also feels like an opportunity for ego death. It also feels like an opportunity to really shift whatever's happening for you internally in your private space. And the new way that is opening up for you, the new pathway you're being invited to walk. Mercury in your 8th house is all about shifting what's happening for you in private, specifically how you talk to yourself. Headspace needs to be a safe space. And then Pluto in your 10th house is inviting you to empower yourself to look at your future a little bit differently. See yourself as an infinitely powerful and divinely guided being, rather than feeling like you're always up against forces outside of your control. If there's just a little way that you can tweak how you perceive the world and how you perceive your challenges, Saturn moving through your 12th house and about to be in your 1st house is really kind of signifying that something major is shifting for you. And it has to do with your ability to see yourself as successful, to see yourself as a divine being, and not being so hard on yourself. One of the biggest things is coming to the realization that you are way harder on yourself than you need to be. In fact, probably so much so that you cause yourself a great deal of misery. So just keep in mind all the ways in which you might be beating yourself up, making things harder than they need to be, putting yourself under a great deal of pressure or unreasonable expectations. These things are all kind of interconnected for you. Now, the Mars-Pluto opposition that's going to feel really, really intense shortly after the new moon is really lighting up your 4th and 10th houses. So it is about the foundations that you have in your life of either rest, feeling safe at home on a physical, literal level, or your emotional stability on an inner level. But in order for you to thrive in life, you have to have a solid foundation. And if you're coming to the realization that you are not thriving, then the most logical thing for you to do is come back to that foundation. Do I have a safe place to sleep? Do I feel comfortable in my own home? Is my living space a sanctuary from the crazy world out there, right? And then on an internal level, asking yourself, are my needs being met? Am I feeling emotionally stable? According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we cannot thrive in life. It is like literally impossible and unreasonable to expect from ourselves if we don't have a solid foundation from which to grow. A plant is not going to grow in the garden if it doesn't have good soil. And we are complicated houseplants. So that's what's happening here, is really paying attention to your emotions, questioning everything you believe, and then looking for those open pathways in which universe is like, come on, man, let's go. I got something awesome set up for you, right? If we have our eyes open, we will be able to see the ways in which we're being invited to bloom. And for you guys, that open pathway is really talking about your feelings, maybe going to therapy, maybe surrounding yourself by different people. If it's possible one of the issues for you is feeling like the people in your life are dragging you down rather than lifting you up. Maybe you don't have anybody in your life, maybe feeling isolated is part of the problem. So, sorry, I have music playing in the background and for some reason it's just driving me crazy today. The open pathway for you, the opportunity to bloom, is by loving yourself unconditionally and making sure that your headspace is a safe space. And if you can just make sure that your headspace is a safe space, I can just about guarantee that your entire life will change. So that's really what it comes down to. Instead of overcomplicating things, just love yourself unconditionally. Let yourself be loved. And if anything in your life, like people or stuff like that, is continually making you feel like a failure, then boundaries need to be set, because you are not a failure. You are a badass human being. I hope that these helped. I hope that this was the guidance that you needed and the support that helps you get through the next little bit. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Mwah. Take care of yourself. Taurus Sun and Taurus Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. There's definitely a lot to talk about. If you didn't catch the general overview in the beginning, I strongly recommend that you check it out. We've got a really interesting balance of positive influences, challenging astrological influences, and a pathway to change. What we have happening, one of the most dominant things is a grand water trine between Mars, Neptune, and Mercury, all in the 3 different water signs. Now, Mars in Cancer right now is activating your 3rd house. So your interactions with friends, your interactions with the kind of people in your inner circle, they're very colored by emotion right now. And you may feel especially drawn to people that you feel safe talking about your emotions. On the other hand, if you feel like the people in your circle are just like really emotional and you're not there, you might be choosing to kind of distance yourself. It really is all about self-preservation. And with Mercury in your 7th house, you are thinking a lot about your interactions with the people in your life. You are kind of really paying more attention to the conversations that you're having, and not just the topics that you're talking about, but the perspectives that are being introduced. You know, if you have a friend, for example, that just always complains and they always play the victim, then what you're going to be doing is kind of sitting back and going, man, what is going on, right? Or, you know, if you have people in your life that are constantly just really taking responsibility and working on themselves and walking a path of authenticity, then you're going to be really inspired by that. You're going to be like, wow, okay, I should embrace these qualities, right? So there is a huge part of this, like the grand water trine happening right now is bringing your attention to the emotions of the people in your life, the emotions of maybe your partners, co-workers, anything like that, and then kind of seeing those as opportunities for reflection. And you may be wondering, okay, are these my people? Or you may be thinking, good Lord, these are definitely my people. But the sense of belonging is a big part of it. And it's not just about belonging, but it's about finding meaning. You know, even when you're struggling with stuff, your sign in particular, whether you're a Taurus Sun or a Taurus Rising, your sign in particular tends to be quite buoyant. You tend to have this kind of natural ability to either just get through stuff as it's happening, or maybe let go of stuff quickly, or at least just be, you know, relatively grounded and healthy in your perspective. It doesn't mean you're perfect though, and it doesn't mean you're completely infallible. So that is why all these reflections happening, you know, within you and outside of you right now are in some way going to be bringing your attention to the health of your emotions and the health of the emotions in the people in your life. Now, the challenge happening right now, illustrated by Venus square Saturn, is kind of making you feel as though, okay, like I said, there's going to be kind of 2 distinct categories as far as the people around you. Some of the people around you are going to be so stuck and so stubborn in their perspective that you might feel repelled by them at this point. You might hit a point where you're like, I can't be a part of that. And then there's going to be other people in your life where you feel really inspired and you're like, wow, okay, these people are really dealing with things in a very healthy, mindful kind of way. But any sort of repeating pattern, as far as the behavior of the people around you and your thoughts in regards to it, that's kind of what the theme is. And the other thing too is that sometimes, for example, as a parent, we may see our children with certain behaviors or certain emotional baselines, right? And instead of going, what the heck, we have to ask ourselves, how am I possibly modeling that same sort of attitude? How am I possibly sort of modeling that same sort of behavior? Or, can I possibly make changes in how I demonstrate emotional regulation in order to pass those lessons or those abilities on to either my children, my friends, my coworkers, my partner, whatever it is. Repeating patterns, that's definitely something to pay attention to. So we are being invited to change, and whatever it is that's not working or not healthy, that's what needs to change, of course. And that change, or the need to change, is being illustrated by the opposition of Mercury and Uranus on opposite sides of the chart. Now, Uranus is in your sign. It's been there for like literally forever. Not forever, but quite a few years. So you have already been undergoing a process of evolution within yourself and really working to manifest a life that aligns with the changes that you're cultivating inside, right? But the opposition to Mercury in your 7th house means this is where you're going to be taking a huge look at the people in your life and asking yourself, are these people I want on board with me? Or are these people that maybe it's time to kind of let go of because I'm going over here and they're stuck, right? Or like I said, it could be any part of that spectrum. It could be like, okay, I'm feeling really stuck, but I see my friend is making some amazing healthy changes. What can I do to possibly learn from them, right? So that's a big part of it. It's about where you're trying to go. It's about being healthy, and it's about recognizing the health of the people around you. So without being egotistical though, without being judgmental, it's simply a matter of recognizing the qualities and the energies that we either want in our life or we don't. And the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st is going to be happening in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships. So whatever conclusions you come to are going to lead to some sort of monumental change within your closest partnerships as a result of making these kind of really deep assessments, right? So the new way that's opening up for you, once we come to realize we're repeating a pattern, the only logical thing is to, as much as we can, try and change that pattern, right? If it's not working for us. So the new beginning, the new way that's opening up for you is about being really, really mindful, not only of the people that you have in your life and the energy exchanges in those connections, but also empowering yourself to be super, super mindful of what's happening inside of your headspace. And so this is where we see your signs, Taurus sun or Taurus rising, moving forwards, being quite selective and quite picky about the company you keep, because either you recognize that people are good for your mental health or not good for your mental health. You know what I mean? It really comes down to that simple assessment. Although relationships are never simple. They're very, very, very complicated and complex. And so Saturn in your 11th house, indicating maybe feeling squeezed, maybe feeling alone and isolated. Sometimes we have to make those hard choices, and sometimes we hang on to relationships way longer than we should because we're afraid of being alone. So just consider where maybe your fear of being alone might be leading to some ongoing connections that aren't necessarily in your highest good. It's just something to think about, right? So the opposition between Mars and Pluto, that's really going to catalyze some sort of massive shift for us, and not always in the most fun way. Mars at the end of Cancer is a great deal of urgency when it comes to taking action based on the deep emotions we're feeling. And Pluto at the very end degrees of Capricorn is urging us to empower ourselves based on our understanding of the history and the precedent that has been set up until now. So that opposition becomes volatile and almost explosive or implosive right around November 3rd, sorry. And for you guys, it's your 3rd and 9th houses. This has everything to do with the company that you keep and the collective things that you believe. So it's all about what you believe. It's all about what the people around you believe, and then the subsequent conversations and the ways in which you connect, right? And then just asking yourself, is this in my highest good? Is this helping me be healthy? Or is this maybe not helping me be healthy? So it's not all bad, you know, everything, there's a little bit of good, there's a little bit of challenge. And one of the ways in which we are being gifted an opportunity to bloom is with an alignment with Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune. And for you guys, it's your 8th, 2nd, and 11th houses. So basically, it's all about giving yourself permission to make these hard choices based on what it is that you value, what it is that you hold most important and most dear to yourself as far as your priorities in this lifetime, right? And so if you find that your connections and your relationships are so complicated that it's very hard to sort out, is this person in a healthy influence or not? If you can just come back to, okay, what are my values? And you may find that it might be easier to make, you know, these hard decisions based on simplifying what's happening and then comparing, does this match my values or not? Does this match what I value and what I'm trying to cultivate in myself? Is this person repeating a pattern that I have worked really hard to let go of? If so, it doesn't align with my values, right? So as much as you can, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things, and trust that your vibe attracts your tribe. The ways in which you can be the most authentic version of yourself and embrace healing, embrace awareness, and humble but honorable action. If you just work really hard to walk your highest path, be the best, healthiest version of yourself, and let go of anyone who's really challenging your ability to do that, trust that the right people will come into your life. Trust that you will never truly be alone, because it is through authenticity that we channel our own divinity. And then the path becomes clear. So I hope that that helped. I hope that those resonated. Thank you so much for being here. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. Mwah. Bye. Gemini Sun and Gemini Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. There's a lot going on, but rather than the feeling of being squeezed and confusing intensity over the last few weeks, what we're stepping into over the next 2 weeks is a sense of finally finding clarity. And the way that we're going to find that clarity is to question everything, to look for the open pathways, and most importantly, stop being our own worst enemy. It's a little bit tricky, of course. It's never straightforward and simple, but one of the most wonderful influences we have over the next few weeks is known as a grand water trine. And what that means is that we have 3 major planets in each of the water signs, and they're forming a perfect triangle. And in astrology, a grand trine in any element simply represents being able to move forwards with grace and ease. So how do we move forwards with grace and ease? Using this influence, we hold space for our emotions, because the grand water trine puts a huge focus and highlight on the necessity of being in a good flow. And our flow is pretty much determined by our mental health and our emotional health. You know, we can only do our best, and of course, every single day, our best is going to be a little bit different depending on how much sleep we got, on, you know, how stressed out we are, and those 2 deciding factors, emotional health and mental health. So the grand water trine for you guys, whether you're a Gemini Sun or a Gemini Rising, it is activating, Mars is in your 2nd house. So you're wanting to take action in a way that's going to align with your ideals. You want to manifest either things or stuff or comfort in some sort of way, either physically or with people. And what you're doing is you're taking action with really big emotions. But here's the thing. If the emotions that are catalyzing our action are emotions centered around fear of loss or fear of lack, then the action that we're going to be taking is not going to be well thought out, and it's not actually going to achieve the goals that we're hoping for. And so there is a little bit of conflict when it comes to, I mean, there's something that you really want so badly, you can like taste it, but there's so many emotions in the way, as far as previous challenges, a sense of limited options, whatever it is that's happening for you. With Mercury in your 6th house, we see that on a day-to-day basis, all that you're thinking about is really, really intense. The 6th house is about our habits, our rituals, our mental health, our physical health. It's aligned with the energy of Virgo. And your sign, as well as Virgo, are both ruled by the planet Mercury. So here we see that your gears are turning. Holy smokes, your gears are turning. You're thinking a lot of really big thoughts, little thoughts, and everything in between. But the big question is, are those thoughts healthy? And so if your emotions are coming in, one of the biggest things that we experience as human beings is we might have a big emotion come up and our brain goes, oh, my job is here. I need to think about stuff. So the brain likes to think. It likes to have a job. And when big emotions come up, the brain goes, I know that feeling. I've felt that feeling before. This time and 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 this time. Right? So the storyteller gets activated. And we tend to get lost, like drowning in emotions, or get anchored in some sort of emotional spiral when we can't make the storyteller shut up. So if you have an internal dialogue, it's probably going off the wall right now. And what these experiences kind of bring us to is either like we're driving ourselves crazy, explosions, implosions, whatever it is. You are being guided to really think about what it is that you're manifesting through your thoughts, your words, and your deeds. If we are always spinning about resentments and we're not going to see opportunities because we're focused on all the things we're mad about. You know, if we are like constantly talking shit about the people in our lives, if we're griping that we don't have any friends while we're hanging out with our friends, people just get annoyed with us and walk away. You know what I mean? So I'm just giving a couple of examples, extreme examples, right? But basically what's happening is that there's something spinning for you, something that's happening on a regular basis, and it is the intertwined effect of your thoughts and your feelings that either you're making yourself miserable, you might be making the people around you crazy, just depending on how much you're talking about this. But your sign in particular has a core need of being able to talk out your feelings. So the open pathway, the opportunity to kind of shift something in order to affect the change that you're really hoping for, is think about the nature through which you are talking about what you're going through. Think about whether or not you're just talking because you want sympathy. There's a lot of ego behind always talking about our problems because often what feeds it is a subconscious desire for somebody to go, oh, you poor thing, I'm so sorry you're suffering. We need validation. You know, children my age and older were often vilified by our caregivers for having emotions, calling it attention seeking. Certain child psychologists back in the day would say, oh, if your child is crying, it's important to ignore them so that they don't learn that they can manipulate you with your emotions. But what happened is a lot of us children from the 80s and 70s and earlier grew up without our emotional needs ever being met because nobody ever went, oh, you poor thing, I'm so sorry. That's all we need as a human, for somebody to be like, I get you, I sympathize, I'm sorry that you're suffering, right? So the reason I'm mentioning that is because if we find that we are in some sort of cycle of always pulling for that, what that means is that somewhere on a really deep core level, we didn't get it. And we're almost overcompensating, right? The idea is that once we get our emotional needs met, once our experience is validated, once we receive that compassion, that understanding, just that simple eye contact or touch, what hopefully happens next in a healthy brain is that we go, oh, okay, I feel better. Now what? What can I do about this experience? What can I do about this problem, right? Once we become co-regulated, then we can talk about what's next. But if we're not able to achieve regulation, emotional regulation, then that means something's missing, either early in our childhoods, deep inside of our psyche, or in our immediate lives right now, right? So what you are coming to recognize and what you are being invited to see is the ways in which you are perpetually trying to fill a hole that, for whatever reason, the methods that you're using are insufficient or inadequate. And maybe it is that you are looking for love in all the wrong places. Maybe you are surrounded by people who don't acknowledge your feelings, don't validate your experience, and then you continue seeking because that need has not been met, right? Another thing that happens is if we are raised by emotionally unavailable parents, then we come to associate as an adult with emotionally unavailable adults, because that's what we came to expect that the world was going to look like, right? So there's a big part of that. There's a big part of really kind of doing some emotional deep dives, figuring out what it is within your psyche that is leading to any kind of repeating patterns within your own desire to meet your emotional needs. And if the methods that you're using, if the people that you're interacting with just aren't doing it for you, it's time to switch things up. It's time to do things a little bit differently. So the change that you're being invited to do, we've got this really big opposition between Uranus and Mercury. And Mercury is going to go retrograde November 26th. So this opposition is going to be repeated over the next 2 months, basically. And what that means is that we are collectively, every single one of us, being invited to question what is happening up here, what is coming out of our mouths, and is that combination helping us evolve? Is that combination helping us achieve the goals that we're going for, right? If we find that we're stuck in a loop, stuck in a rut, stuck in our heads, then we can automatically assume that whatever it is we're doing is not working, right? And if we can acknowledge that as a fact and start employing different methods, or start connecting with different people, or start speaking to ourselves a little bit differently, then that's the way in which we can affect change. So for you guys, that polarization is happening with Mercury in your 6th house. So that's, like I said, there's something about on a day-to-day basis, or some sort of a habit you have around communication, around spinning, perhaps around dark thoughts, or your desire to talk something out. Maybe it's you haven't properly gotten it off your chest yet, or maybe you haven't achieved that realization yet, but you want to. You want something to change. It's just that the change that you're seeking is kind of elusive, mysterious, hidden. And that is illustrated with Uranus, the planet of change, being in your 12th house of mystery. It's like there's this mystery you're trying to solve, right? Well, the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st is activating your 6th house of daily habits and routines and mental health. So this is where right around the beginning of November, you're going to be given an opportunity to do something differently as far as how you think, what you say, or your daily habits, your daily routines. Switch things up, because whatever it is that you've been trying to do to meet those needs, it's not working. And sometimes we just need therapy. Sometimes there's this amazing person on YouTube. She's called the Crappy Childhood Fairy. This is not a paid promotion. This is simply me saying, hey, her material's pretty great. So if you seek out the information you need, it will be there. I can guarantee you. And so the new way for you is seeking out new ways of dealing with the same old problems. The pathway for you that's opening up is finding a new way to deal with your energy, your emotions, your mental health, whatever it is. If you're willing to try something different, that's where you're going to find the solution. And then the shadow work that's being done is going to have a focus on generational patterns, inherited difficulties, either physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. A lot of it has to do with coming to the realization that our caregivers left us with some really big wounds. Sometimes the realization is that our caregivers, maybe they tried their best, but their best just wasn't quite good enough. You know what I mean? There's a huge variety of realizations that you might have, but if you're able to get to the root of when these behaviors started, if you're able to get to the root of why this hole in your heart exists, then you will understand what will truly heal it or fill it or fix it, right? And of course, it's not all bad. We are being given an opportunity to see ourselves differently. Jupiter is in your sign, which means that you have this amazing lucky influence right now. And if you can see yourself differently, if you can talk to yourself differently, if you can question your beliefs or question the things that people told you, then you're going to give yourself an opportunity to be reborn. And that element of being reborn is going to go hand in hand, not only with you doing the hard work yourself, but also taking a really good look at the nature through which you interact with the world around you, right? And if there's any repeating patterns, as far as being surrounded by emotionally unavailable people, or having people in your life that perpetuate wounds instead of helping you heal, these are, it's going to be a combination of looking at what's happening inside of you and then looking at what's happening, inside and outside. And then towards the end of this 2-week period, the sun forms a trine to Saturn, giving you an opportunity, especially if you can deal with some of these big, heavy things like insecurity, trauma, feeling worthless, any of those things, right? If you can really heal that, if you can step into a place of authenticity and channel your own divinity, that's when the work situations get sorted out. That's when you don't feel like you're fighting a battle every single day of your life. That's when the pathway moving forwards all of a sudden starts to become clear, right? Yeah. So just remember, please, that you're unconditionally worthy. And some of us just had really crappy childhoods, right? But we're doing the best we can, and our best is going to be different every single day. I hope that helped. I hope that resonated. I wish you guys all the very best out there. I hope you have an amazing new moon, Halloween, Samhain, whatever it is that you're celebrating. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. Bye. Alrighty. Cancer Sun and Cancer Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. Mars has been in your sign, and on November 3rd is going to pop into Leo for a quick minute, but then it's going to go retrograde and it's going to come back. And you may feel yourself as though you are being put through the ringer for the next little bit. But everything that's happening is giving you an opportunity to empower yourself on some sort of a level in which you are able to be emotionally authentic. And as a Cancerian, either Cancer Rising or Cancer Sun, you definitely embody the qualities of being not only a deeply emotional person, but also an emotionally available person. If somebody needs to talk about their feelings, they're going to think about you first. If someone wants to share a happy moment or a memory or simply gush and be soft, they're going to think of you immediately because you are a safe person. And so that emotional availability, that willingness to be emotionally authentic is something that maybe you struggle with because the world is harsh, the world is cold, the world is very judgmental. And in a lot of ways, you are still learning how important it is to have really strong boundaries and be very picky about who's allowed in your life so that you can stay soft, so that you don't have to always wear that hard exterior armor to keep yourself safe, right? You need, on a core level, to have people in your life in which you don't have to wear that hard armor, people around that you can be soft and silly with, right? So there is a grand water trine happening right now, and you, as well as the other water signs out there, are going to receive the most benefit from it because it's your vibe, it's your energetic vibration. So Mars in your sign is forming a really supportive angle to Neptune in your 9th house and Mercury in your 5th house. So what that means is that you're actually being given a gift of cultivating joy. and being reborn again in a way that allows you to nourish or heal or support your inner child. So when you're not working so hard to protect yourself, you are able to be creative and silly and fun and all these things, right? And so if you look at your life and you're like, wow, I'm not silly, I'm not creative, I'm not fun, my first question would be, who's taken the spark out of your life? You know, who is making who's making you feel unsafe to be those things? Because that's your natural vibration. That is who you are at the core, right? So if you're not really feeling yourself, take a look at what's happening outside of you and go, okay, wait a minute, why don't I feel safe to be myself, right? The biggest message of these horoscopes is that it is through authenticity that we channel divinity. And it is through giving ourselves the opportunity to be the most authentic version of ourselves that we are able to heal, we're able to grow, and we're able to move on in the most beautiful kind of way. So as much as you can, create that space, create that time in your life so that you can be more creative and more silly and all these things, right? And the challenge that's kind of happening for you right now, illustrated by Venus forming a challenging square to Saturn, is that maybe you feel as though your relationships are restricting. That's the biggest thing. Whatever it is, as far as who you interact with on a daily basis, you know, maybe you have besties or favorite people that you don't get to see. And so on a daily basis, you're having to mask up. You're having to wear your hard armor because the world is crazy and cruel sometimes, right? So if you're feeling really down, if you're feeling just really like blah about everything, I would definitely invite you to think about, okay, who are you surrounded by and how much time do you have to really let that guard down and feel safe? Because that's going to make a huge difference for you. Now, Mercury is forming a really challenging opposition to Uranus, inviting us all to question our beliefs, to question our perspectives, to question everything. And figure out where are we potentially repeating some sort of an unhealthy pattern that's keeping us stuck, instead of us being able to fly free and live our best lives, right? So for you guys, that opposition is happening, with Mercury in the 5th and Uranus in the 11th. So that opposition is really activating the two parts of your chart that are most associated with creativity. The inner child, being silly, having fun, and not just doing so in private, but also being able to find like your people. Finding people that really align with that and help you feel safe to be that kind of a person, right? And so you may be finding that you're outgrowing people. Maybe you had safe people in the past, but maybe they don't feel safe anymore. Or maybe, like I said a minute ago, maybe your besties and your favorite people are far away. And so on a day-to-day basis, you're like, eh. So whatever it is that's happening for you, it is bringing your attention to those themes. And on November 1st, we have a new moon in Scorpio, which is in your 5th house of the inner child and cultivating joy. So if you're able to give yourself an opportunity to be reborn, again, just simply prioritizing your emotional health, saying no to any people or situations whenever possible that make you feel like garbage, and really just putting your needs first. All of this 5th house energy is encouraging you to be a healthy level of selfish. And ask yourself, does this bring me joy? If not, chuck it in the fuck it bucket, right? So moving forwards, the open pathway for you, the opportunity to kind of embrace a new way of living your life, a new way of cultivating healthy boundaries, that's activating your 5th, 7th, and 9th houses. So again, coming back to that theme of whether or not you're experiencing joy, especially in the context of your personal relationships. And then kind of asking the question of, what do you believe about yourself or the world around you that is either opening doors or maybe closing them? Sometimes we tell ourselves things like, well, nobody's as silly as me, right? Or, you know, nobody's as emotional as me. So just consider that maybe you're telling yourselves your things that aren't necessarily true. And whenever possible, if we can make sure that our headspace is a safe space, then that enables us to flourish in a way that like nothing else can touch. So yeah, really paying a lot of attention to the people in your life, really paying attention to the things that are bouncing around in your head. And really just the most important thing is giving yourself permission to be a healthy level of selfish, whether it be letting go of personal or professional relationships, prioritizing, you know, FaceTime calls with your friends so that you feel cheered up, so that you maybe make it a regular thing. You know, if your favorite people don't live close to you, then you could have like one day a week or more, where you kind of have an online FaceTime party or something like that. You know what I mean? Cultivating those connections and reminding you that you're not alone is going to be really important. If you're feeling extra isolated, making that effort to reach out and let yourself be loved. Let yourself be reminded of how absolutely incredible you are and how much of a magical being you are. If life is making you feel like a black and white movie, then it's time to bring some color into your life. You know what I mean? So I hope that helped. I hope you have an amazing new moon. I hope you experience it as being a profoundly rejuvenating and joyful experience, which it absolutely should be for your sign. And thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys have a great time. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Mwah. Bye. Leo Sun and Leo Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. I apologize in advance. I've got some really bad allergies right now. My eyes are itchy, my nose is itchy, so if you see me kind of going like this, that's what's going on. So we've got this really cool astrological signature happening right now. I was describing it in the general overview in the beginning. If you missed that, you should definitely go check it out because there's some really cool stuff to talk about. You know, we've been going through some really challenging energy, circumstances, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so to have astrological influences like this are such a blessing. It's like the sun coming out on a rainy day. It looks like a kite, this shape right here. And the kite is kind of polarized by this strong red line in the middle, illustrating a bit of a power struggle, a bit of an opposition. But the big lesson in the horoscopes right now and in the astrology right now is that if we're able to figure out how, why, when, and where we are stuck, then we can pull up that anchor. We can take flight, like the kite in the chart right there. So one of the big boosts that we're getting right now is a grand water trine. And what that means is that Mars is in Cancer, Mercury is in Scorpio, and Saturn is in Pisces. And between the three of them, Neptune, sorry. Well, Saturn's in Pisces, but we're really looking at Neptune right now. Mars, Mercury, and Neptune. Mars is about taking action. Mercury is about what we think and what we say. And Neptune is about walking our highest path, embodying our ideals as much as possible. And so within this astrological signature, we have big emotions coming up because a water trine is really it's drawing our attention towards our emotions represented by water. So there's a lot happening individually and collectively, but if you let your emotions surface, if you actively seek the truth underneath your emotional experiences, what you will be given and what we will all give ourselves is the opportunity to embrace authenticity. And it is through authenticity that we channel our divinity. A lot of us really struggle with trying to cultivate an identity in this world, because people are so focused on appearances. People are so focused on social media and all this just non-stop chatter in the airwaves, right? And so sometimes wanting to make our mark on the world, wanting to live our lives, sometimes it feels like we are stepping into a waterfall, a deluge of all this stuff happening all the time. It can be profoundly overwhelming, right? Especially in the world today. with Mars moving through your 12th house, you're being invited to think about the ways in which you take action that are unconscious. Because Mars in the 12th house is a sense of doing things and not even being fully aware that either that we're doing them, or not being aware of the effect that our actions have on other people. And if we are blind to the effect we have on other people, then we are perpetually going to be looking around going, God, I don't understand. Like, what's their problem? Why do people always have a problem with me? So if there is any kind of a repeating pattern in your life and you're always like, wow, that's a mystery, I would like to gently encourage you to really take a good, humble look at the choices that you're making, the action that you're taking, or potentially even the action that you're not taking. Because, for example, if there's somebody really important in our lives, but we never talk to them, and then all of a sudden we reach out and they're like, what the hell, dude? You know what I mean? We have to be mindful, okay, maybe this person is reacting badly because I have not been taking action that I really should be, right? Or alternatively, if we act in a way that is egotistical or just rude or callous, and then people are like, dude, what is coming out of your mouth? And we justify it by being like, I'm just saying. That's unconscious action that is unintentionally or incidentally stepping on the feelings of other people, right? Now, I'm just using extreme examples. I'm not accusing you of doing those things. What I'm trying to do is illustrate what Mars in the 12th house can mean, and doubling down on Mars in Cancer, which is a deeply feeling water sign in the 12th house. What it means is that because Mars is in your 12th house, it means that there is some sort of theme happening right now in which the action that you are taking is either hurting your feelings, hurting somebody else's feelings, or not sufficient to supporting the emotional health of anyone involved. There's a big focus on emotional action, and in the 12th house there is mystery surrounding it, or there is the absence of it. Now Mercury is in your 4th house, which means that you are thinking about emotions, but you may be thinking only about your emotions. Maybe in the 4th house, you might be thinking about your children's emotions. One thing that happens a lot for parents is that we are working so hard to take care of everybody else around us. And then we're like, man, why do I feel empty? Because we're not filling our own cup. Because we're filling everybody else's cups and ours is empty. So basically what I'm trying to illustrate in all these different random examples is that there's some sort of repeating theme in your life. Your attention is being slowly brought to it. And the most important thing you can do is have eyes wide open. The most important thing you can do is just have this humble willingness to look at things and see things as they are without assigning meaning, without assigning, well, they shouldn't be feeling that because I tried. No, none of that. If somebody says that they're feeling something, that's a fact. Move on, right? We're not here to debate other people's feelings. If somebody ever comes to us and says, hey, the action that you're taking is making me feel a thing, that's an established fact. There is no space to argue with that, right? So there's a couple of ways that might be coming through. You might have people in your life saying, thank you. Thank you for being the kind of person where I feel like this beautiful boost every time I come around you. Thank you for being a beaming ray of sunshine, right? But if everybody is like, oh, wow, you're amazing. Thanks for brightening my life. And there you are feeling empty. That's the thing that needs to be worked on. So we have themes of emotional health. We have themes of action that we're taking. We have themes of what it is that we're thinking and saying. And we're being invited to look at how they all connect, How is it all connected? How can we look at the bigger picture and give ourselves the opportunity to improve our lives, to improve our well-being, to feel as though we are thriving, not just surviving? And there is an energy, we have a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st. And the new moon in Scorpio is going to be in your 4th house of home, family, and emotional health. So as long as you're willing to see the truth, as suggested by the Scorpio influence, Scorpio is like, oh, I need to know everything. I need to know the truth. I want to get to the bottom of why things are the way they are, right? And so this truth-seeking Scorpio new moon is going to be happening in your 4th house of emotions and stability and safety. And so whatever it is that comes through for you, as much as you can be willing to look at it and accept it for what it is without arguing with reality, that's going to give you the opportunity to give yourself a new beginning. So the new beginning is much like the phoenix. Scorpio is associated with the phoenix, a mythological creature that died and was reborn countless times through fire. Through fire. And so you yourself might feel as though you are burning up. You might feel as though your life is burning up in some sort of a way. But there were a lot of ancient peoples throughout the earth that finished off the harvest season by burning the fields. And what that did was that it cut the grass, it released seeds, and it gave the earth carbon, which was necessary to feed the soil and to have a good harvest next year. Sometimes fire is really important. Sometimes fire is profoundly important, right? And so on a metaphorical level, we can utilize fire to really give ourselves that opportunity for rebirth. So Mars is opposite Pluto. Mars and Pluto are the planetary rulers for Scorpio. And their opposition, creating this wild amount of tension over the next week or so, is going to be activating your 12th and 6th houses. It is your mental health. It is your daily routines. It is the habits that keep you locked into whatever reality it is that you have. And if for any reason you're not happy with your reality, you are being invited to change what you think, question everything, question what you think, and change your daily habits to align with whatever it is that's missing in your life. So that journey is going to be very personal. It is going to be, I gave a wide range of examples just to try and help you understand that there's a wide range of ways in which this might be manifesting for you, either internally or externally. But just remember, sometimes breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. And the more we are willing to embrace the truth during Scorpio season, the more we will be able to give ourselves the opportunity for rebirth. So I hope that helped. I hope it resonated. I really do hope that I've been able to support you during this time. I hope you have a magical and amazing and refreshing new moon, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Mwah! Thank you for being here. Bye. Virgo Sun and Virgo Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. We have a grand water trine involving 3 major planets. We have an opposition between Uranus and Mercury that's going to repeat over the next 2 months because Mercury is going retrograde. And we have an opposition between Mars and Pluto that's going to repeat until spring of 2025. Yay! If you didn't catch the introduction in the beginning of the video, I strongly recommend that you have a peek because I do kind of summarize all these themes. But what I'm going to do for you guys right now is I'm going to tell you how this is going to manifest on a very personal level, whether you are a Virgo Sun or a Virgo Rising. Mars in Cancer is activating your 11th house. So you are wanting to take action in a way that feels authentic, in a way that aligns with your emotional experience. And you may be going through some really deep emotional stuff. Maybe you feel compelled to share your emotional experience with the people of the world, whether it be through social media, writing a book, having a blog, whatever it is. The other thing too is if you're a Virgo Sun or a Virgo Rising, either way, you are typically very aligned with appropriate and respectful behavior. You are very meticulous, you are very detail oriented, and you have a very, very strong foundation of morals and just general reasonable expectations for yourself and humanity. And as a result, the things that you talk about, the ways in which you interact with the world around you, you can be quite reserved. Even if you're right pissed off about something, you are so aligned with being polite and respectful that quite often you won't say anything. You'll be like, it's fine, it's okay. Simply because you avoid confrontation, you really don't want to get into it. And you know, there's a lot of different reasons why you might be like, it's fine. But what's happening with Mars in Cancer, which is a deeply feeling water sign, and it's in your 11th house, is that one of the things that might be happening for you is you might be more vocal about speaking your truth as far as how you're feeling, as far as how you feel about where you're going, how you feel about what you're doing, or how you feel about what's happening in the world around you. And so with this willingness to be a little bit more open or forthcoming about your feelings, you might also be having a reverse effect of thinking, oh my God, why did I say that? Maybe you're feeling like you're oversharing. Maybe you're feeling like a conversation you had with someone didn't go very well, and you might be thinking, God, maybe next time I'll just say it's fine. But it's really important to not hold back if something needs to be said. And often we have a choice where either I swallow my words and I just tolerate discomfort to make somebody else feel comfortable, or if I don't want to be miserable all the time, at some point those words have to come out. And they might make somebody else uncomfortable, but you know what? It had to be said. Now it's on the table, and now I feel better because I don't have that resentment inside of me. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things, is you're having to periodically make that choice. Now with Neptune in your 7th house being one of the corners of this grand trine, one of them was Mars in your 11th, one of them is Neptune in your 7th. That means that within the context of your one-on-one connections these days, personal or professional, you are really embracing and aiming for a higher level of your ideals. Because having a lifetime of going, it's fine, when it's not, means that you have a lifetime of stored up resentment, right? And so we all hit this point where we're all full up, whether it be hitting your 40s and being full of rage and sick of everybody's shit, or your own personal version. Basically what's happening for you guys is that with Neptune in your 7th house, you have higher expectations of the people in your life. You have a higher sense of what you need to feel healthy and happy and productive. Rather than always making sure that everybody else is okay, you're starting to employ a healthy level of self-acknowledgement, assertiveness, speaking your truth, whatever it is. And so as a result, with Mercury and Scorpio in your 3rd house, especially if you're being a little bit more picky and choosy about your connections, what's opening up are more opportunities to talk about your feelings, more opportunities to do shadow work or exploring the psyche with people close to you, instead of trying to figure everything out on your own like you usually do, right? Right. So this grand water trine is going to facilitate more emotionally available connections for you moving forwards, as long as you don't stop talking. Because one of the biggest concerns I have for you guys is that rubber band effect, where maybe a conversation doesn't go well. Maybe you think something's going to be straightforward and somebody argues with you or challenges your emotional experience. Rather than wanting to stand up for yourself, typically that's when you'll be like, okay, never mind, forget it. I wish I didn't say anything. Please don't stop talking. Please don't stop talking about your feelings. Please don't stop advocating for yourself. Do it more. Because as Dr. Seuss said, those who mind don't matter. And those who matter won't mind. The people who love you want to hear what you think. And the only way to cultivate healthy relationships is to have a certain level of truth, honesty, and vulnerability. And if people don't ever get to see you as vulnerable, they're never going to really feel close to you. So within the safety, within the context of safe relationships, being vulnerable, speaking your truth, letting those emotions spill out actually facilitates a stronger connection between yourself and the people that you love. So yeah, Mercury, your planetary ruler, is in your third house. It is forming an opposition to Uranus in your ninth house. And what we see here is that this is a potent and very important opportunity, because if you don't talk about what you're going through, the belief systems that you're drowning in are just dampening your fire. It's really like your spirit is really exhausted these days. And so if you want to heal, if you want to experience that Phoenix level rebirth, you need to be able to talk about these things, because it is your belief systems that are coming into question. There is a sense that you really need to question the things that you believe, because either you're being too hard on yourself, you're making yourself miserable, or something in that realm. There's a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, just after Halloween and Samhain, and it's activating your third house. So there is either a new friend, a new conversation, a new willingness to speak your truth, something along those lines, and it's a blessing. It is exactly what you need. It is going to lead to rebirth, and as long as it feels safe to be able to talk about a wide variety of subjects, oh my goodness, you've got a lot to let out. So let it bloom, let it grow naturally. It is exactly what you need, instead of suffering in silence, my friend. So yeah, the new way for you is cultivating more healthy relationships in which you can let your guard down, because more often than not, within the relationships you have, you're working. You're the advisor, you're the helper, you're the mom friend, whatever it is, right? But because you don't always feel safe or willing to let your guard down, people don't have a chance to help you, and therefore the relationships are not healthy, they are not balanced, and you end up resentful, right? Right. So the new way that's opening up for you is having relationships in which you feel safe, you can speak your truth, you're not on duty, you are receiving help and advice just as much as you offer it, and as a result, your inner child is safe, it will come out to play, you're going to be silly, you're going to bloom. It's good. It's really, really good. And then, of course, the more relationships you have in which you're able to feel safe to be yourself makes you really see the shallow relationships for what they are. It's not that you're unworthy of love and support. It's just that so far you haven't been surrounded by people who help you feel safe enough to let your guard down, right? And so that's the biggest thing that's happening for you. There's a new energy infusing your circle. There's a new opportunity for you to feel free is really the biggest part of it, you know? So moving forwards, keep surrounding yourself with people who help you feel free and safe and unconditionally loved, without having to be on duty, right? I hope that helped. I hope it resonated. I wish you guys all the very best. I hope you have a magical new moon, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Mwah. Thank you for being here. Bye. Okay, I'm back. Took some allergy medicine. Took off my sweater. All right. Libra sun and Libra rising. Welcome to your horoscopes. We've got a lot going on, but it's good this time. It's really good. And even though we are all being squeezed personally, collectively, and everything in between, what we're being given is an opportunity to be reborn. And the Phoenix is one of the symbols of the zodiac sign Scorpio. And that's definitely the energy right now. We have a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, giving us all an opportunity to burn up anything that no longer resonates with who we are, the lives we're trying to live, or the energy that we want to embody. But the thing is that we can't really hit that rebirth place unless we are willing to let the old die. And that is always the hardest part. Scorpio is also associated with ego death. If you didn't catch the beginning of my video, I strongly recommend that you check out the general overview in the beginning, simply because I talk a lot about the death card in tarot and how ego death is a huge part of the psychological evolution that every single human has to go through. And it's never just one ego death. If we are willing to walk a path of awareness and awakening, then it is a continuing cycle of recognizing where and when our ego is getting in the way, and then being willing to let that part of ourselves go. And it is through that that we are able to give ourselves new life. But a lot of this time of year, there is a huge focus on all that is dead and dying. I love that Joni Mitchell song, Urge for Going. She has this one verse in the song that says, all that stays is dying and all that lives is getting out. And it's a very potent season of the year because we are seeing reflected outside of us all that is crumbling, all that is about to hibernate. But you know, so much of nature, it's not really dead, although it looks like it's dying. So much of nature is simply hibernating, conserving its energy and waiting to be reborn. So we can embody those same philosophies. We can really embrace that metaphor of hibernation, because what we're doing is we're simplifying our life experience. The more that we can get rid of any extraneous, is that the word? Unnecessary parts of ourselves that keep us stuck in a loop, that's what needs to be released. And so one of the big, beautiful boosts that we're getting astrologically right now is known as a grand water trine. And so we have a triangle being formed right now between Mars in Cancer, Mercury in Scorpio, and Neptune in Pisces. So what we're seeing represented here is that if we are willing to let our emotions surface, and at the same time not judge ourselves, not attach too much story and meaning, but simply uncover the truth of what's happening for us at the deepest soul level, then it is with that truth, it is with that information that we can forge a new way forwards. Scorpio loves seeking the truth. Scorpio season is all about getting to the core of whatever it is that we're going through. But this process of soul searching is not for the weak. Anyone who has ever embarked on a path of seeking enlightenment quickly comes to realize that enlightenment comes after the dark night of the soul. And that dark night of the soul is also named in circles in the context of like addiction or alcoholism. It's also known as hitting rock bottom. But when we are willing to get to the core of our experience, when we're willing to let go of anything else that's in the way, that is the rebirth. That's the simple version of it. So Mars in Cancer is activating your 10th house. You're having a lot of big emotions around whether or not the action that you're taking is going to help you achieve the stability and certainty and financial security that you really, really, really want out of this lifetime. And the hard part about our human experience is that depression lies to us. Depression will tell us, I suck, everything sucks, there's definitely no hope, right? And so there's a big possibility that your emotional experience involves some level of depression and some level of hopelessness when it comes to looking at your future, imagining your possibilities, and trying to gauge, trying to assess whether or not you are on a path of success. But if you're being extra hard on yourself, if you are up against a lot of challenges and obstacles, if the people in your life are wearing you down rather than lifting you up, you got a lot stacked against you, right? And so we are being invited to question everything. Mercury, the planet of thinking, communication, but also our own personal perspective, is forming a really challenging opposition over the next 2 months because it goes retrograde November 26th. Mercury is opposing Uranus. Mercury is we need to question everything. Uranus is in order to be able to change. And so this deep period of introspection is bringing you guys and your attention to whether or not your day-to-day life aligns with the ideals that you imagine for yourself. With Neptune and Pisces activating your 6th house, it is becoming crystal clear for you where you want to be. But if there's a lot of emotions around not being there yet, then it's really hard for you to see your next best steps. So that's where, if we can create safe space to process our emotions, then the next best steps become clear. With Mercury in your 2nd house of values, finances, and resources, there is a strong indication that you're paying way too much attention to your immediate environment, and then automatically assuming that whatever it is that's in front of you is a reflection of your self-worth. No, my darling, you are a work in progress. And if you don't like what's happening in front of you, then rather than sinking within those big emotions, we have to think, okay, how can I change my choices? How can I change my perspectives? How can I change the action that I'm taking? Because if whatever it is I'm doing right now isn't working, well, then logically I have to assume that I need to do something different. The other thing, though, is that there's a possibility that you're already doing everything right. And sometimes we have to acknowledge that change takes time. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that every journey that we have starts with a single step, and it's not going to instantly magically be fixed or amazing just because one day we decided to do a manifestation spell. We have to acknowledge that, yes, use magic. Yes, call in spirit. Please do. It will help. But we also have to do the work ourselves in the 3rd dimension. God can't help anyone who's not helping themselves. We can't just sit and wait for that lottery win, right? So anyway, what we're hoping to do is employ a little bit of magic, a little bit of hope, a little bit of faith, but also a little bit of practical realism and willingness to take those hard steps and to continue taking those hard steps consistently over a long period of time so that we can end up where we want to be, right? So with Venus in your 3rd house, there is a lot of thinking, there's a lot of communication around Saturn in your 6th house, how, when, and where, and why you feel as though your immediate environment is not enough. And your mental health, your physical health is at risk if you are too serious, too cynical, or too depressed. If it is stepping into the realm of clinical depression, please by all means seek professional help for that. Nobody needs to suffer endlessly, right? If you are the source of your own suffering because you're beating yourself up, that definitely has to stop as well. But with new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, activating that 2nd house of money and resources, you have an opportunity to be able to refresh your perspective in a way that allows you to move forwards with ease and grace. And you may not like this, but it starts with gratitude. And it's very hard for us if we feel profoundly dissatisfied or unhappy with where we're at. For me to even mention gratitude probably pissed you right off, right? But the truth will always piss you off, but it will set you free. Gratitude, as much as we don't want to admit it, gratitude for what we have right now softens the heart. Gratitude helps us settle in and feel comfortable and feel safe, and that is when divine guidance kicks in. If we're always spinning around how we're not enough, life is not enough, the money we have is not enough, our awareness is going to be closed off in a way that we don't see those blessings, we don't see those opportunities, and we definitely don't see the path moving forwards, right? So as much as you can, question everything and employ as much gratitude as you can possibly muster for who you are, for how hard you try, right? There's a lot to be grateful for, and you're a kick-ass human being. So maybe start there. Be grateful for yourself, and then see if you can expand on that. Moving forwards, the new wave for you is to empower yourself by realizing that your emotional health either is going to make or break your situation. And if you do not have a solid foundation of feeling emotionally healthy, that is the starting point in which to begin your journey. Mars is opposite Pluto. That's another one that is going to be a repeating interaction. Mars is in your 10th house. That's where there's a lot of emotions around your financial stability, especially looking forwards. And Pluto is in your 4th house, saying nothing can get better if you don't have a foundation of loving yourself. You can't beat yourself up into success. It doesn't work. I've tried. You can't hate yourself into healing. It doesn't work. I've tried. So what we're seeing here is that realization of when, where, why, and how you might be in your own way. And it's not just you. It is every single human being is having to ask these very same hard questions. But again, there's that piece of, if you can soften your heart, if you can soften your perspective, if you can approach things with even just a little bit of an attitude of gratitude, that will be the beginning point of setting yourself up for success. So yeah, that's what I've got for you guys. I really, really hope that that resonated. I hope that it helped. I hope it didn't piss you off too much. Sending you guys all of my love. Do your best, and every day your best is going to be different, right? But please, by all means, don't beat yourself up. You try so hard. Take care out there. I will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you for being here. Bye. Scorpio Sun and Scorpio Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. We have a new moon in your sign, and this is the one time every year that you get to experience your own personal rebirth. Happy birthday to any Scorpios that have a birthday coming up, or maybe you just had one. I hope you're having great celebration, and I hope that you are taking the opportunity to give yourself a ton of love during this time. It's your season. And we have a grand water trine adding this beautiful, peaceful energy to what has felt like quite the chaotic experience over the last few months. And you, as well as the other water signs out there, are going to get the most out of this energetic influence. Mars is in Cancer, which is your 9th house. So there are a lot of emotions around your desire to seek change, to seek newness. And it's quite possible that what's happening for you is either a small awareness or a big awareness that your emotions are telling you that you're ready for change. Either feeling dissatisfied all the way up to like crazy frustrated. On some level, your emotions are telling you that you're ready for change, you're ready for newness, you're ready for something to shift, right? And with Neptune in your 5th house, your ideal is to have more fun. You want to be happier. You've got really simple goals, right? You want to be happier. You want to be healthier. You just want to feel like you enjoy being alive, right? And so with Mercury in your 1st house, you're thinking about, how can I possibly do things differently? How am I possibly in my own way? How can I evolve in a way that helps me shift timelines and align with the reality that I really want to be in? And so the challenge that you're kind of facing is Venus is in your 2nd house. You are either financially in a good place or realizing that you're on the right path financially, because with Venus in your 2nd house, something in your immediate environment is receiving a boost. Whether it be financial manifestations, more access to the resources you need, or simply just feeling like things are kind of clicking into place lately. But with Saturn in your 5th house, one of the ongoing challenges that has been happening for you is feeling as though maybe you're working all the time, maybe you're making great money, but maybe you just don't really have much fun. Maybe there's not enough time in your schedule for fun, or maybe you're just struggling with some sort of an ongoing depression or something like that. But Mercury opposing Uranus right now, and this opposition is going to happen for the next 2 months, because on November 26th, Mercury goes retrograde. But Mercury, the planet of thinking and communicating and what we believe, how we see the world, is in opposition to Uranus, which is the planet of transformation and evolution. So we are all being invited to question everything. Question what you believe. Question what the heck is bouncing around in your headspace. Question what are the topics that I typically choose to talk about, or what are the topics that the people around me talk about? Because as you kind of step back and observe these things, you may come to realize that either the relationships in your life are supporting your evolution, or the realization that the relationships in your life are maybe kind of hampering or making evolution hard or impossible. The way in which people either help or hurt our evolution, a lot of what's coming through for you is that element of what the people in your life think and what the people in your life talk about, right? And if we're always stuck in a loop as far as what we think and what we talk about, if conversation topics are always around this sucks, they suck, did you hear about that gossip, we're keeping ourselves at a very, very low vibration. But if you surround yourself with people who are willing to take personal responsibility, you can say this sucks, but we can also say, I kind of had a part in it too. You know what I mean? That is where we have room for growth. That is where we have potential for awareness. That's where we're going to really get the most out of our personal relationships. So don't feel bad for questioning the relationships. Don't feel bad for really kind of taking a good look at the people in your life and asking yourself, are these healthy or are these not healthy for where I want to be and where I want to go? And the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st is giving you an opportunity to have that personal sense of rebirth. It always happens for us right around our birthdays that there's going to be a new moon, and also a sense that like, I feel like a new person. I'm thinking about the last year. I'm kind of thinking forwards about what I want to do in the year to come. That sense of kind of really taking stock of where you are is always going to happen right around your birthday, or if you're a Scorpio rising, right around this time of year, because it's activating your first house of identity. And a lot of the ways in which our evolution is stunted is if we have locked into some sort of identity and we're not willing to change. If we're willing to evolve, if we're willing to embody the phoenix and be reborn, life is infinitely full of potential. Often it really usually is just us getting in the way. I mean, obviously life is hard and obstacles are real, but the energetic focus right now is simply just looking at how we might possibly be making things harder for ourselves, right? So the new way opening up for you is potentially expanding the connections that you have, personal or professional, reaching out, networking, crowdsourcing, something like that. But the idea is freshen things up. The idea for you guys in particular is freshen things up and make those conscious, intentional choices to be quite picky about the people you surround yourself by, or the activities that you do on a daily basis, or the ways in which you create space so that you can have fun and cultivate joy, right? All work and no play makes us dull. The other opposition that's happening, your two ruling planets, Mars and Pluto. Mars was the first ruling planet for Scorpio before Pluto was discovered. And then after Pluto was discovered, that's the modern ruling planet for Scorpio. That's why you have two. But they are in a really strong opposition, and they're both at 29 degrees, which is a part of each zodiac sign that makes us feel like urgent. Like whatever the planet is doing, it has to happen now. And so you are feeling extra compelled to take action based on the emotions you're experiencing and to empower yourself in a way that opens up more possibilities for yourself, for your life, and the path that you want to walk, right? So that's where you're at. You're ready for newness. And if you're willing to take a good look at yourself and the people around you, it will all become clear as far as what your next best steps are. So what we're looking forwards to is an opportunity to change those habits, to change those patterns, to prioritize our happiness in a way that is healthy and sustainable and gonna work for us long term, right? So I hope that resonated. I hope that helped. Thank you for being here. Happy birthday to all the Scorpios out there. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. Mwah. Bye. Sagittarius Sun and Sagittarius Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. There's definitely a lot going on. If you didn't catch the intro, I strongly recommend you go check out the beginning of the video because there is so much to tell you about. But what we're doing is we're moving out of the traumatic and chaotic energy of the past few months, and we're moving into a period of time in which the astrological signatures and influences are really well balanced as far as presenting some reasonable challenges for us to look at and deal with, but also giving us a support system, an open pathway, a sense that even if some things feel hard, other things are starting to turn out well. So there is a beautiful harmonious sense of balance as far as the energetic influence is happening for the collective right now. And I wanted to start off with something good. The really good thing happening right now is called a grand water trine. And what that means, we have 3 water signs in the zodiac. Mars is in Cancer, Neptune is in Pisces, and Mercury is in Scorpio. And with these 3 very strong planets working together in a very harmonious way, we are being given an opportunity to look at our emotions and hold space for our emotional experiences in a way that maybe felt hard before. Maybe it felt unattainable. Maybe it felt overwhelming. And not to say that the emotions we're experiencing right now won't be overwhelming. In fact, there is a very high level of intensity happening right now. But this sense of being squeezed is leading to change. And Scorpio, one of the associated symbols associated with Scorpio is the phoenix. And the phoenix dies and is reborn through the process of completely burning up in fire and flame. And so in a lot of ways, we feel as though we are being squeezed, dying. Sometimes it feels like torture, right? But that is also what the birth process feels like, is it feels like we're dying. It feels miserable. But what happens is every time that we're squeezed, every time that something in our lives dies or a part of ourselves dies, it leads to rebirth. It leads to new beginnings. Every ending leads to a new beginning, every time. So even if we can't see past the darkness, we have to trust that if we keep walking, we will come out of the dark night of the soul, and we will come into the dawn of a new age for ourselves personally and collectively. So this grand water trine is really bringing our attention to emotions. And for you guys in particular, with Mars in the 8th house, you may be dealing with big, overwhelming emotions, but in private. You may be thinking about some really heavy stuff, money, death, taxes, whatever it is. But for the most part, you're like, I'm fine. And you're dealing with that sense of overwhelm in private. Neptune is in your 4th house, which means that deep inside, either in the safety of your own home with your family or just simply in your own heart space, not only are you experiencing this emotional overwhelm, but you're also asking yourself, okay, maybe I don't like where I'm at. Where do I want to be? And so being able to continually remind ourselves of what our ideals look like, what our dreams look like, if you can continually remind yourself that the darkest time is always right before the dawn, and for all the light, for all the darkness, light balances it out. If you're able to give yourself gentleness and compassion, it will help you find those next best steps. And with Mercury in Scorpio right now, there is a big focus on seeking the truth. And with Mercury in your 12th house, that truth may feel elusive. It may feel as though there's some sort of mystery you're trying to solve about yourself, about your life, about whatever it is you're dealing with. But what we're seeing indicated in the astrology for you guys is that the pathway to things clicking for you is not going to be in the realm of overthinking. The pathway to things clicking and making sense is going to be by letting your emotions surface instead of trying to stuff them. If you have a tendency of feeling overwhelmed by your emotions and then stuffing them, this is going to be one of the biggest things that comes up for you, is the realization that you not only need more healthy coping mechanisms, but also nothing's wrong with emotions. And it may often feel as though our emotions are too big for us to handle or too big to share with anybody. But if we run from them, if we hide from them, it's like a children's book in which there's this massive monster in the closet, right? And we know it's there. And no matter how much we hide under the blanket, it's still there, right? So this is your call, this is your invitation to stop running and maybe invite that monster out of the closet for tea, right? And be like, all right, dude, give me your worst. What's going on? What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of dying? Are we afraid of failing? Are we afraid of being alone? Lay it on the table. Let's talk about it, right? Because in the silence of our minds, in the quiet of our own personal space, in the closets of our metaphorical bedrooms, we suffer in silence because those problems feel so big and so overwhelming. They're scary, it's terrifying, right? But if we can bring these things out into the light, if we can talk to a trusted friend, if we can seek out a therapist, if we can, even journaling, like I have made insane progress over the last few weeks, just writing out my horrible, crappy feelings, because what happens is it ends up in a linear kind of way, leading us to some sort of massive realization. The number one thing is you got to get it off your chest. You got to get it out of your heart. No more suffering in silence, my friend. What is opening up for you, though, is a fear that nobody could hold space for you, or a fear that if you told people what you really felt, they might be worried about you, or they might not know how to handle it, or whatever. And so we definitely have to pick and choose. If you need to get something off your chest, picking an appropriate, safe person through which to do so, right? And if you think about it, you don't have any safe people, then that's when we need to look for a professional. That's when we need to find another pathway, right? But I guarantee you there is no feeling that you are experiencing right now that no other human has felt. Your feelings are no bigger than anybody else's have ever been in the history of humanity. But if you feel like you're drowning, they're too big for you right now. And you shouldn't carry that load on your own. You shouldn't suffer in silence, right? So just remember that you're loved. Remember that if you look, you will find somebody who can listen, who can help. And you are coming to the realization, with Mercury opposing Uranus, you are coming to the realization that your physical health and your mental health have to be the highest priorities in order for literally everything else in your life to work. We cannot ignore our health, our mental or physical health. We cannot ignore it and then think that everything's going to turn out okay. I guarantee you it won't. But alternatively, especially with the new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, activating your 12th house, if you can invite the monsters out of the closet, if you can get those big feelings off of your chest, then you will give yourself new life, because you will be prioritizing your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health. That is the key. There is no avoiding it, and there is no other way. And the new pathway for you is to establish within your life regular opportunities to get things off of your chest, regular opportunities to realign with your sense of ideals, to recalibrate the path that you're on with a very clear vision of the future that is supported by being mentally and emotionally healthy. Mars opposes Pluto on November 4th, really kind of doing this final like kick in the bum with shadow work. You may feel as though your own personal dark night of the soul really kind of peaks around November 3rd and 4th. But shortly after that, Mars moves into Leo, Pluto moves into Aquarius. And so that pressure, that intensity, that crisis kind of feeling, it will pass. I guarantee you it will pass. But before it does, right around the 3rd or the 4th, you might have your own breakdown that leads to a breakthrough. And it is going to be around whether or not you feel as though your life is reflecting back your values. And it's going to be about whether or not you feel like you share the same values with the people in your life. It might be triggered by something financial. It might be triggered by thoughts of your own mortality. It might be triggered by something completely random. But yeah, right around the 3rd or the 4th, you may feel as though things really come to a head for you. And please make mental health your highest priority. You are worth it. You are unconditionally worth being loved, being supported, being listened to. You matter, your feelings matter, and this too shall pass, I promise you. So just be mentally prepared for that. You are going to bloom. You are going to bloom, because what's going to happen is you're going to heal in ways that maybe you thought were unattainable or impossible. You are going to establish a solid foundation of emotional health. And from there, you're going to bloom, my dear. You are going to bloom like wildflowers. It's going to be beautiful. So just remember that, yeah, if you want a monster in your closet, invite it for tea. Ask your emotions, what is it that I need to work on, right? And if what you hear in return is a whole lot of negative self-talk, don't listen to it. Depression lies to you. But if you hear that negative self-talk, that is your clue that your depression is unsustainable. And by resolving that, everything else will sort itself out. I really hope that helped. I hope that it resonated. I wish you guys all the very best. Thank you for being here, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Mwah. Bye. Capricorn Sun and Capricorn Rising. Welcome to your horoscope. What we're looking at is the 2-week period from October 27th to November 9th. And this is going to encompass the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, Halloween, and the period of this time of the year is the halfway point between the Fall Equinox and the Winter Solstice. And the Winter Solstice is when Capricorn zodiac period starts. So you may feel this almost like something's in the air, almost like something's coming, right? And it's almost like, when you're driving home and you get a few blocks from your house and you're like, this is familiar territory. Something about your experience during this time may feel oddly and vaguely familiar. But what we have is a really mixed bag of blessings and challenges all jumbled up together. So let me walk you through it. We have a grand water trine activating our emotional centers. Mars is in Cancer right now, which means there's a lot of emotions around the action that we're taking or the action that we want to take. And because that planet is in your 7th house, you may have a lot of emotions around what other people are doing, whether it be friends, lovers, business partners, a roommate, a boss, whatever it is. What we're seeing in this configuration is the people in your life are taking action, and there's a lot of emotional connotations to it. With Mercury in your 11th house, you might be thinking, what does this action mean? What is the meaning behind what's going on? And with Neptune in your 3rd house, there might be fog and confusion around any communication that you're engaging in. So a lot of the times what happens is if somebody does something and maybe they're clearly upset and we're like, you okay? And they're like, I'm fine. Okay. The communication was foggy and definitely not clear. The action was definitely emotional. But with Mercury in the 11th house, we ask ourselves, I don't really know what to do about this. If they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about it, right? And I want to remind you that the roles could be reversed. You could be taking action that is causing big emotions in other people, and you could be like, what's your problem? If you're not employing awareness towards your own behavior, it will cause these cycles to repeat. So basically what's happening is that we are all going through a lot of really, really big emotions right now, but the ways in which we're perceiving it, categorizing it, and integrating it is wildly different depending on who's involved, right? For you guys, there's an opportunity to really think about, okay, how am I manifesting things through the words that I'm using? Or how is my circle of friends or the people that I spend the most time with, how is that either helping or hurting my mental health, my idea of alignment with my highest path, right? And am I able to employ a little bit more ownership? Am I able to take a little bit more responsibility in a way that helps me really see the truth about what's going on, rather than being like, what's your problem? Because if we are willing to have those hard conversations, the truth will be revealed. But sometimes those hard conversations don't happen because either somebody's too emotional to talk, or maybe we're not creating that safe space in which the truth is going to come out. So we want to make sure that we talk in a way that makes people want to listen. And we want to make sure that we listen in a way that makes people want to talk. So if those conversations aren't happening, the likely culprit is that there is not safe space. The other thing too, though, is that we can't have conversations with people when they're in the middle of big emotions, right? We have to wait for those emotions to calm down, and then we can have a productive conversation. So a lot of it is all about context and timing as well. So there is an opposition happening with the planet of communication. Mercury is opposing Uranus, and Mercury is going to go retrograde on November 26th, which means that it's going to walk away from Uranus and then come back and then walk away. It's going to be like, and another thing. So with Mercury in Scorpio right now, there's a lot of intensity around all that we're thinking about and all that comes out of our mouths. And that intensity is not always filtered. So we really do have to be mindful of that. Uranus for you guys is in your 5th house. So it feels as though something's really, really shifting in your personal life. Either you are reflecting on something that your kids are doing, whether you're reflecting on your own inner child, or maybe just thinking about whether or not you're even happy. There's a lot where you're recognizing, okay, I know that something needs to shift in order to be happy. But with Mercury in your 11th house, it's possible you're like, well, that person needs to change and then I'll be happy. Or if the world wasn't so crazy, then I'd be happy. If the cost of living was less, then I'd be happy. Well, you may be right in a lot of ways that if those things changed, you would automatically be happy. But the problem is, if we always say, oh, it's something else, it's someone else, and then I'll be happy, what we've just done is we have handed the power of our happiness to somebody else. And then we're like, oh, I'm powerless. And that's not entirely true, right? If the world is really stressing you out, and it stresses me out too, I just don't read the news if I don't have the capacity to hold space for that. I will read the news when I'm emotionally ready, but I don't want to do it when I'm emotionally not prepared, right? Or if people are continually doing things that pisses you off, how about just don't hang out with them anymore, right? Or if it's happening inside of your home, maybe some changes need to happen. So basically, just be mindful of any times in which you hand over the responsibility of your happiness or mental health to somebody else, because those are moments in which we feel disempowered and it perpetuates the problems. It does not help. And there's a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, activating your 11th house, giving you an opportunity to either have a moment of awareness, awakening, finding meaning in whatever it is you're going through, or maybe just simply stepping outside of your perspective, getting a change of scenery, giving yourself the opportunity to look at yourself or your situation a little bit differently. And especially if we're like really, really, really stuck in our own suffering, doing something like helping out the homeless, working at a food bank, and then you see people that are suffering like way more than you. Oh, I bet you $1 million. You're gonna go drive home in your vehicle and be like, damn, thank God I have a car. And then you're gonna go home to your warm house and go, God, I'm really grateful to have a warm place to sleep, right? So that's how sometimes being in service to others or getting outside of our perspective can really help us shift that perspective in a way that we realize clearly that we have so much to be grateful for. And yes, you may have a lot of stuff that you, for very valid reasons, feel like you're suffering. And I'm not taking away from that, right? But in order to ease our own suffering, we have to work really, really hard to keep a healthy balance inside of our perspective, in which we're able to put that suffering into perspective and really see it for what it is: temporary, changeable, and quite often not too bad, right? And again, I don't want to minimize if anybody's going through some massive trauma and chaos, then it's really bad, right? And I don't want to take away from that. But I'm just trying to bring you back to how gratitude can really shift that perspective. It can soften the heart, and gratitude can sometimes be the key to unlocking whatever the answers are to the problems that we're dealing with. So the new pathway for you is all about being the change that you wish to see. Don't hand your power over as far as why you feel the way you do, and don't give away responsibility for fixing your problems to other people that have no hand in fixing them, right? The chaos of the world, it ain't gonna end anytime soon, right? So we can't hand over our happiness for the next 5 decades because we're waiting for the world to chill out. It doesn't work that way, right? See what I mean? So anyway, we all have an opportunity to realign with our highest path, but the biggest thing for all of us right now is to recognize where and when we are in our own way. So give yourself some grace, right? We don't want to beat ourselves up. We can't beat ourselves up into feeling better. But if we're willing to acknowledge the little ways in which we're making ourselves miserable, that can be the difference that makes a world of change, right? Okay. Well, I hope that helped. I really hope that that resonated. I wish you guys all the very best. Thank you for being here, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Bye. Okay, I had to put my music back on. Turned out the speaker died. I like having background music. It helps me tune out everything that's happening around me. Let's see, who's next? Aquarius Sun and Aquarius Rising. Welcome to your horoscopes. There's a massive shift right now. We have a new moon in Scorpio, and the new moon in Scorpio is at the same time as we reach the halfway point between the Fall Equinox and the Winter Solstice. This period of time throughout the history of humanity has always been associated with death and dying. And it's because of a couple things. It's because of nature changing around us. We're getting prepared for winter. And there was also the time of harvest. Not only were old farmers harvesting their crops and things like that, but any animals that they raised throughout the year, they would often cull at this time of year, because not only is it too hard to feed them throughout the winter, but also preparing that now would allow you to have meat to eat, for example, throughout the whole winter, right? So there's a lot of death and dying, but there's also a sense that these are natural processes and cycles. And all that we can do, just like old farmers, all that we can do to really simplify our existence right now is going to make it profoundly easier to take those next best steps moving forwards, because we don't have all these extra things that we're paying attention to. Now, not that we are harvesting crops and culling animals or anything, but, well, maybe some of you are, but such things are quite rare now. What we're doing is on a metaphorical level. We are having to maybe face some shadow stuff. There's been a lot of intensity in the air, so a lot of people, including myself, are dealing with like really big emotions. And what's happening is that that emotional experience is being compounded by a lot of planets, strong planets, aligning in water signs. You see, in tarot and astrology, water is associated with our emotions as well as our own personal flow. And so even when we recognize the seasons changing outside of us, sometimes we don't even realize how much is changing inside of us. So as much as we can, if we can align our practices, our behaviors in a way that feels like it is syncing up internally what is happening externally, we can make the most of this season. We can embrace the energies of death and dying, because we know that for every ending there is a new beginning. If you didn't catch it, I would strongly encourage you to watch the intro to this video, because I do talk a lot about the themes of death and dying, comparing a couple of different tarot cards. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. But basically this emotional influence, one of the biggest players in that is Mars. Mars is the planet of action, and it's in the sign of Cancer. Now, not only are we taking, I'm so sorry, I have the worst allergies right now. Not only are we taking emotional action, but also when you think about Mars being the planet of action, and the zodiac sign Cancer, where it is represented by the crab. The crab sidesteps. The crab doesn't just walk forwards, it goes sideways. And so a lot of the times when we have big emotions come up, we walk sideways because we're like, I don't really want to deal with this right now. I don't want to deal with myself. I don't want to deal with that person. I don't want to deal with that situation. So there is a bit of a common theme of avoidance right now. Sometimes when we have really, really big emotions, it's actually a good idea to avoid yelling at someone or avoid a confrontation. But we risk extending any kind of suffering or discomfort if we just stuff those feelings and avoid dealing with them at all. It's really important to pick appropriate moments, situations, and opportunities to be able to get those big emotions off of our chest, allowing us to face them, process them, and heal from them. So there's a grand water trine happening with Mars in Cancer. Like I said, Mars in Cancer is in your 6th house. So on a day-to-day basis, maybe mental health stuff is coming up for you. Maybe you just have a lot of really big emotions on a daily basis. But it's going to be really important for your sign in particular to be paying a lot of attention to the habits or rituals that you have on a daily basis, and then questioning whether or not do those habits and rituals support your mental and emotional health, or are those habits and rituals harming your emotional and mental health? When we sidestep big emotions, and maybe we're stuffing our emotions, maybe we're drinking, maybe we're smoking, whatever it is, those emotions never go away. They're waiting for us in the sidelines for when we stop moving, when we stop ignoring them, you know what I mean? So definitely something on a day-to-day basis is either reminding you of your big emotions, or maybe something on a day-to-day basis is making you feel really emotional. Maybe you feel like your progress is being stalled or blocked or something like that. With Neptune in your 2nd house, you've got a really heightened sense of ideals when it comes to what it is you want to manifest in your life. And with Neptune in your 2nd house, there's a big possibility of you not seeing true value in what it is you bring to the table or what it is that you've already manifested. That influence of Neptune in your 2nd can often feel like I'm not enough, what I'm doing is not enough, the amount of money I have is not enough, and we kind of perseverate around not enough, not enough, not enough. When in fact, if we're able to be grateful for what we have, even if it's not as much as we want, it softens our heart and makes it so that energetically we are open to seeing the pathway to what it is we do want. But if we're always stuck in loss, lack, fear, anger, we're never going to see the next best steps. And when we are angry, when we're frustrated, when we're experiencing despair, I promise you, nobody wants to be grateful. In fact, suggesting gratitude to someone who's in the thick of some really dark emotions is going to piss you right off. So we have to be gentle with ourselves. We have to find ways to soothe ourselves into being receptive to suggestions like that, right? You can't tell an angry person calm down. They're going to get more mad, right? And you can't tell a depressed person to cheer up. doesn't work that way. We have to acknowledge the emotion. We have to gently hold space. And then when the time is ready, we have to invite in new strategies, new solutions. So with Mercury in your 10th house, it is a fantastic time to do a deep dive, not only with your psyche, but also as far as really kind of analyzing the decisions you're making, the path that you're walking, and seeking the truth in all that you do. Being truthful with yourself about whether or not the action or the attitudes that you embody are really going to get you to where you want to be, right? But if you are willing to hold space for your emotions, you're going to receive heaps of useful information when it comes to those daily habits, when it comes to your values, and when it comes to your path as far as success, security, stability, any of those things. There is a big highlight on money. There is a big highlight for you guys on manifestations. And if you're not where you want to be, there's a lot of big emotions around it. But please remember, depression lies to us. Depression tells us it's always going to suck. Depression tells us that we suck. So if those things are bouncing around in your head, make sure your highest priority is making sure that your headspace is a safe space, and then start working at all the other stuff. There is a challenging square between Venus and Saturn, and it's going to come through for you guys as far as feeling as though maybe other people have success and you don't, or maybe feeling as though there's that despair piece, there's that depression piece. And so it's going to be really important for you guys to be mindful of any of that negative self-talk, any of that negative self-dialogue, and nip it in the bum before it gets too far. And if you find that that's a huge part of how you think, and it always has been how you think, then that's going to be an opportunity to seek out therapy or guidance for that kind of support, right? A negative mindset never manifested a healthy, happy life. It just isn't compatible. So the opposition that you're experiencing is a lot of stress, a lot of strain around wanting to achieve ideals and recognizing exactly how much gas you have in the gas tank when it comes to your emotional capabilities, right? If you are already working as hard as you can and it doesn't feel like it's enough, don't beat yourself up. Don't take that 6th job or whatever it is. You need to sleep, right? So pushing yourself harder, for most of you guys, pushing yourself harder isn't actually the solution. For most of you guys, giving yourself some grace, being more gentle and compassionate with yourself, prioritizing rest, that's going to be the key to your success. Because what's happening is you're thinking 10 steps ahead, and you may possibly be ignoring how important it is to have a solid foundation from which to grow. I mean, maybe dandelions can grow out of a crack in a sidewalk, but most of us need more than that, right? So yeah, that's the biggest thing happening for you. There is a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, activating your 10th house of career, money, accomplishments. So if you're able to shift your priorities around prioritizing your emotional health instead of prioritizing the hustle, then you're going to end up exactly where you want to be. Can't ignore your mental health. That is really the biggest thing. And so if you make mental health your highest priority, everything is going to become clear. So I hope that helped. I hope that resonated with you. I wish you guys all the very best. Please do be gentle with yourselves. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Mwah. Thank you for being here. Bye. Pisces Sun and Pisces Rising, welcome to your horoscopes. One of the biggest astrological signatures happening right now is a grand water trine. And for you, as well as the other water signs out there, it's going to be a huge boost to your creativity, to your flow, to your emotional health, to your intuition. And this grand water trine is activating, well, Neptune is in your sign. So there is a gentleness, a softness that you're able to employ as far as seeing yourself in a new light. And maybe if you've struggled with self-esteem stuff, if you've struggled with self-doubt or any of those things in which you feel like you're not enough, Neptune's influence is actually going to help you see the best in yourself. It's going to help you be more gentle, more compassionate, more easygoing, as far as your sense of identity and your sense of purpose in this world as well. Mars in your 5th house means that we are all going through this period right now where there's a lot of big emotions, and those big emotions are compelling us to take action. Sometimes the action that we take from big emotions is not well thought out, whether we're having a Tawanda moment or you know what I mean. There's a lot of different ways in which big emotions can catalyze decisions that may feel good in the moment, but may lead to problems down the road. The thing is, with Mars in your 5th house, you guys are actually, like, that's the easiest, most gentle placement for Mars right now, because it's catalyzing joy. It is helping you dig deep and prioritize your own happiness. And because you're on the same axis as Virgo, you may struggle with giving and giving and giving and feeling as though you don't get much in return. You might feel as though you are always in service to others, but struggle to see who you are and maybe what your purpose is on this earth. The beautiful thing about this grand water trine happening right now is going to be a boost to your confidence. It's going to be a boost to your joy and your creativity. And it's going to be a boost to your mental health as well, because Mercury is in your 9th house. If you're willing to do a psychological deep dive on yourself, if you're willing to look at all the ways in which you make yourself miserable, or talk yourself down, or stop yourself before you try something because you're afraid of failing, if you're willing to really do that deep self-analysis, this is going to be the most incredibly potent and productive time, because in little gentle ways, you are going to be shown how you are in your own way. And you're also going to be given the keys to unlocking those obstacles. You're going to give yourself the opportunity to do things differently, to feel rejuvenated, to feel like you've been born again. So I strongly recommend let yourself be loved, pursue joy, pursue happiness. And if you're able to create quiet space, you guys, because you're Pisces or Pisces sun or Pisces rising, either one, you have this natural connection to the divine, to the spirit world, to your angels and guides. So if you're able to create that quiet space, the messages will come. I would like to encourage you to practice observing, not absorbing. Because if we look at those emotions come up and then look at them like they're here, then it gives us the opportunity to gain separation and go, I wonder why I feel that way. And then another thought comes up, I wonder why I think that. You know what I mean? Whereas if we don't have that separation, we say, I feel that way and I think that, and it can never change. And then we're stuck. So being the observer allows us to get separation and allows us to see things for what they are and allows us to make any necessary changes. So we have a new moon in Scorpio on November 1st, and it's going to activate your 9th house of possibilities. And the 9th house is all about trying something new, expanding maybe outside of our comfort zone, or switching things up in a way that we feel fresh, we feel rejuvenated. And the biggest way that we can give ourselves that gift of new life is to question our belief systems and to make sure that our headspace is a safe space. If anything happening inside of your head is causing you to stop before you start, or pull yourself back instead of thriving, those are the things to pay attention to. Like the artist who's like, oh, I can't share my art because everybody's going to think it sucks. Really? Did you take a survey? Pretty sure you didn't actually ask anybody. You stopped yourself, right? So it's just one little example, but I want to help you see how sometimes what's happening up here limits what we're able to manifest here. If you want to embrace new possibilities, this new moon in your 9th house is that perfect opportunity, but you have to throw doubt out the window. You have to throw all your fears and all your insecurities and all the things in which you hold yourself back. That has to go. And then if you give yourself the benefit of the doubt, if you're willing to, fail, whatever, take those risks, take those chances, open your heart and step into a new life. It is you that gives yourself that power. Nobody else. You give yourself that power. So the new opportunity for you is interacting with your community in a different way. Whether you have just reinvented yourself, or maybe you're just stripping away the layers of your metaphorical onion. It's a story I told in the beginning of this video. You should go check it out. Whether the new life that you're giving yourself goes hand in hand with a new sense of who you are. And the more you're willing to give yourself the grace of seeing yourself as continually evolving, instead of feeling like the only way society will accept you is if you have a new name or a new label or a new title or a new certificate. Yeah, maybe the world wants certainty, but you don't have to align with that. You don't have to subscribe to that. You can be like, I am a different person every day. And that's okay, because I said it's okay, right? So giving yourself new life, embracing new possibilities, and interacting with your community in a different, new, uplifting kind of way, that is what your path moving forwards looks like. And it's going to be a path that you choose because it feels fun. Maybe a little exciting and terrifying all at the same time. But walking this path feels fun, and that's why you're going to do it. You have new opportunities to either start a new career or evolve the one that you already have. You have new opportunities to be emotionally healthy, and you have new opportunities to see yourself as a manifestation of God's love. So it is through authenticity that we channel divinity. And that is your path moving forwards, is to continue being your beautiful, authentic, messy, perfectly imperfect self, because that's exactly how God created you, right? You don't have to go find yourself. You just have to peel back the ways in which the world made you feel like you weren't enough. And then when you get to the bottom and you'll find you that was always there from the very beginning, and then love the shit out of yourself, that's your path. Thank you for being here. I hope that resonated. I hope that it helped. I hope you have a magical 2 weeks. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Yeah, take care. Bye.